everybody, this is Sam Miskovich from Ars Technica, standing with Kyle Orland and Mark Walton. We are through with day, 6, 7 of E3.
30.
This 2016 edition went on forever, but a ton of video games, and thank goodness we got to play some pretty good ones, so we're here to list off some of our favorites from the show. Let's start off with Kyle. What is your first pick for one of your best games of E3 2016?
Yeah, my first pick is going to be a VR pick. It was the Unspoken, played at the Oculus booth. It used the new Oculus touch controllers to track your hands, which means one hand you could be summoning a fireball, the other hand you put up a shield, and it was a two-player multiplayer game online. I was dueling against Sam in the other room and just hurling fireballs at him. He could warp over to other positions, so he would like disappear and I would have to find him. And then you can cast spells as well. There was one where you made a paper airplane, you'd fold it in 3D space and then throw it. It would turn into a jet that would attack you. Another one, you could pick up a javelin and hurl it, and if you missed, you missed. You had to actually, have skill with your hands instead of just hitting a button or like aiming a joystick.
It was impressive because dueling in multiplayer in virtual reality, there's a lot of different tricky things. There's a whole new frontier.
It's tough to get it right.
I thought it was a very clever thing by Insomniac Games to come up with that.
Yeah, definitely.
My first pick, not virtual reality at all, but definitely a fantasy reality. The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, coming to the Nintendo NX and the Nintendo Wii U next year. It actually exists. It is big, there's a lot to do. It may not necessarily be a Zelda game in some ways, but it recaptures that feeling of discovery that I loved in the very earliest editions. It seems to be throwing out a lot of old conventions. It's throwing out a lot of the default expected dungeon things. I have been a jaded Zelda gamer for some time, and now I have a Zelda game that I think recaptures the feeling, but does new things. You can throw weapons, you can climb walls, you can steal horses. There's a lot of cool stuff going on. I want to explore a lot more of it. We only got 35 minutes with it.
Wasn't long enough.
Not long enough. That was the
thing.
thing.
A huge open world with, they say, hundreds of dungeons and temples.
I want it all. I cannot wait for more. It was a good first taste, so definitely at the top of my list. How about you, Mark? What do you got?
So my first one is kind of a weird choice. It's Abzu, which is by 505 Games. And the reason is because they sat me down to play this game, right? And I was like, I'm going to have to write a thing about this, and I'm going to struggle to tell anyone what this game is about. And I was like, what's the gameplay loop, right? You hate to be that guy. But after playing it, you know what? It's just a beautiful experience.
So relaxing.
It's so relaxing. So the idea is that you're a diver that has unlimited air. Doesn't matter. You don't have like a bulky like air pack or anything on you. You're just free to roam this ocean. And effectively, there's a narrative like thrown in to do with sharks and some mysterious machines, and you're basically trying to discover why you are diving in the ocean. That's the whole point of the game. But it's beautifully done. Like there are whole like shoals of fishes that float around
just hundreds
you.
On the screen at once.
Right. And the way it's like animated as well, it's not photorealistic. It's heavily stylized, but it looks so beautiful. And I could imagine just being sat down on my couch, being sucked into that world for hours. So
anything that calls out that Echo the Dolphin feeling in
exactly
aesthetic
like
and exploration
that.
without having to jump up and do crazy flips in the air.
Reminded me a little bit of Journey as well.
Absolutely, it's got that kind of vibe to it.
So my second game also goes on the indie side. Surprising pick from the MIX, the Media Indie Exchange, a game called Konchambara. I had seen it over the years. This is a multiplayer, 4-player on the same screen experience where 2 of the players are all white, 2 of the players are all black. This matters because the entire world is totally monochromatic, all white, all black, no shading. So you as a white or black character in those colors can completely hide in certain parts of the environment. So that aesthetic is one thing, but it also has a really smooth mechanic of dash attacking and having you get caught up, you get stopped if you do not nail that attack. Therefore, you really have to judge the environment, judge where the other color might be, predictively dash a certain amount of distance to get that shot. It all combines to a very interesting seek and hunt mechanic that makes 4 players shooting each other on the same couch feel like it did back with GoldenEye. Right. It sort of takes the idea of screen cheat, like it's cool in theory but not actually in play, and then turns that around, flips it to make it really playable, fun, and exciting. A good gameplay loop. There are a lot of great, impressive indies. I wrote about a bunch of them, but that would be my top pick for an indie at this year's E3.
Yeah, it was interesting. You would see a character jump out briefly, like a black on white, and then they would dive back into the black. You're like, oh, I think I know where they are. And by the time you got there, they've totally disappeared because it's just black on black. There's no contrast at all.
That sounds really cool. I hadn't actually seen this game, but that sounds really cool.
I hear you have your second pick is decidedly non-indie. Maybe perhaps the total opposite.
I actually gave you a pick earlier, but during this conversation I decided to change it, but it is still decidedly non-indie.
Okay.
It's Mafia 3.
Mafia 3, eh?
Now, the interesting thing about this game, right, it is, I saw it last year, right, and aesthetically, is beautifully done. Like they've created, it's not New Orleans, it's something, I can't remember what it's called, but it's like New Orleans basically, it's modeled on it, they've given it a different name. And it's amazing. Like it's got this aesthetic to it that's so detailed and so beautifully done. Yet, on top of that is like this super violent gameplay. I mean, this thing, like, there are like headshots and like killing moves where he kicks a guy in the face, pulls his shotgun out, and there's like, psh, like brains everywhere. It's that kind of game. And why I'm interested in it is because from what I've seen of that game so far, there's supposed to be a storyline of like revenge and all this kind of stuff, but I don't like a single character in this game.
I've heard that from other people.
Right. It looks brilliant apart from that one thing, right? So I'm hoping that if they can nail the story and make these characters likable and really contextualize the kind of hardcore shooty stuff, it'll be a really,
That's
really...
not a small thing. Like the characters are unlikable now. Oh, maybe they'll make them
But
likable.
because we, as you know, at E3, we see them out of context, right? And I do think that from what they've said, it sounds good. And like I say, the demo we got to see at E3 was just... It was cool.
And with a good serial television show, you take a long time to dive into good characters, dark characters with a lot of shades of gray. So if they can nail that, great. But certainly E3 is not the place to find out. But definitely, that sounds exciting. Kyle, close us out. What's your final pick?
My last pick I've also changed in the course of us talking.
Wow, what a mix-up.
I'm going to go with The Last Guardian.
All right.
Built up over 7 years, announced at E3 2009. Finally got to play 30 minutes of it this time. And just the raw emotion of the animation of these characters. It's this 3-story tall dog, bird, horse thing. You go up, he's wounded, he's got something in his shoulder and his thigh, and you go up and he roars at you out of defensiveness and pain and knocks you over, and just the feeling that comes from that roar and you getting knocked back. The expression on the faces, there's a painterly quality to the light. The gameplay itself, a lot like Ico, which is over 10 years old now, kind of an old school type of puzzle platforming, which has kind of been played out, but it's played out so much that it's like retro now. It's comforting. It's not a huge open world. It's something simple.
Retro meaning PlayStation 2. We've reached that point in our gaming world.
We're so old.
Are you sure you actually played it though? Are you actually positive?
It might have been a
happened?
fever dream.
Yeah,
After
right.
so long, no, it was real.
Hey, you know what? Sometimes Best of E3 does mean a fever dream. But that sounds wonderful. Sounds like we had even more games than just that based on what our conversations that we couldn't possibly fit in this video.
Totally.
Head to Ars Technica. We have a ton more content. Like and subscribe to see more of the stuff that we did film here at E3. Thank you so much for tuning in. With Mark and Kyle, this is Sam from Ars Technica signing off. Let's go drink!
See you next time.